Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. I am your host with the most, Joe Kuzma, and I'm seconded by my host of the least or something. Oh, no, that wasn't it. What is your title there, Brian?
The host who doesn't like toast.
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense to me. But before we dig into some things that do make sense, actually, there is one thing that makes sense. We're talking about road tripping it, and some people have to road trip it to come to Pittsburgh anyways, so this is kind of a dual purpose. But for those who like to do away games like myself, I was planning a little trip. Do you know what I ended up doing, Brian?
What?
Oh, it's a cheap plug. I went to steelcityunderground.com/tickets, and I clicked on the StubHub link, and I started perusing all of the available seats for a few games. I think I may end up in Cleveland and or Detroit this season, not to mention being at Heinz Field. So if that kind of interests you, head on over to steelcityunderground.com/tickets, and we get some credit, and you get the same type of deal that you always do.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And you know what? That's no BS, folks. I really was looking on this site earlier, and I nearly went directly to StubHub's website, and I'm like, you know what? I should be doing this through my website. I should be doing this through Steel City Underground, so we get a little bit of credit for it. So I am looking to go to Ford Field, and unfortunately, the Factory of Sadness is also on the itinerary, as it always is every year. I've been there the last 6 years in a row for the Browns Steelers, and those have been hit or miss. But before we get to that opening weekend up in Cleveland, we have some other pertinent events going on. In fact, I hear rumblings that there may be some people showing up in St. Vincent's College here shortly.
Yeah, I think that's the rumor going around that at least some people may show up.
Oh, geez, you had to go there, didn't you? Couldn't resist.
You set me up.
That's not the topic for today. They say beating a dead horse, which I think is a cruel act. I think killing the horse is probably pretty bad, but then if you're going to beat the thing after the fact, that's pretty bad. But we've done that, or maybe a broken record's probably more politically correct here. But we do have, I guess it's still football in shorts, but some of it will involve pads. Training camp is here finally, so we're coming to you a day early as players report, and then we'll actually have some practices going on Friday. It'll be interesting to see who does and does not show up. I guess we'll just make quick note of that, as you were alluding to, Brian. Antonio Brown's really working hard, though, on getting Lev Bell to show up.
He is. He's stepping up and trying to take that leadership role and pushing at him because, I mean, look, the truth is AB wants a ring. And I think he realizes the best way to get a ring is to have Lev Bell there. But, I think as everybody has been saying, and I agree with this, if Le'Veon doesn't show up until the second or third preseason game is about to happen, I'm fine with that. He's not going to take snaps anyway. He's not going to get a lot of reps anyway. The other guy who might not show up, I think I'm not quite the same. I don't have the same feeling about that. And that's Big Al.
Yeah, Big Al. And you know what? The interesting thing, too, is that since Bell hasn't signed his tag, what he's really doing is that he's avoiding training camp. I don't know why you'd want to avoid training camp. Maybe it is like, hell on earth for all I know for these players. I know they put in early mornings and long nights while they're there. Another way, that's how you get better. But there was, who's the guy from the Texans? Is it Dwayne Brown, I think, that's not there, and he's getting fined like 40-50 grand a day. It is mandatory. Right. So
they're starting left tackle.
Yeah, as long as Bell doesn't sign this puppy, then he's not under that same mandate, and he doesn't lose any money. So maybe he's feeling like, hey, I'm going to be putting in some work without getting paid, which is essentially what kind of happens. These guys get 17 paychecks. They get paid during the regular season. So, and then I was listening to the radio, just the kind of sidebar of that. talking about playoff bonuses, I guess is what you want to call it, because they do get paid in the postseason, but it's like a drop in the bucket if you're making AB money. I mean, we're talking 40, 50 grand for a game there. Both sides get the same thing, win or lose, I do believe. And even the Super Bowl, I don't even know if the Super Bowl is like six figures for that little bonus. They get a little bit of the kitty there. So
yeah, it's nothing in relative terms. You're right.
I don't have the figures in front of me. It was something that just came off the top of my head. But what I do kind of have in front of me is I want to talk about sleepers, training camp sleepers today. And we've got a sleeper, at least I have some sleepers for every position. I think you do too, Brian. We may have some overlap, so why don't we get right to it?
Absolutely.
You know what? I was going to start with offensive line, and I have Ethan Cooper as the sleeper because, quite frankly, he's the only guy that was added by the Steelers, be it free agency, draft, college free agency, street free agency, any variety of ways you could be bringing guys onto the roster. He's the only new offensive lineman. He's the only new face in town.
He is the only new offensive lineman, and I don't disagree with your choice there as a potential sleeper. The Steelers have had great luck with undrafted linemen like B.J. Finney and Hubbard, but there's another guy who could potentially be a sleeper in camp that could get a much bigger role if one of those guys we talked about, if Big Al decides not to show up and not sign his tender, and that's Gerald Hawkins.
I wasn't sleeping on Gerald as much just because so many people were talking about him because of that. But I can't disagree with that. In fact, Ramon Foster had a Q&A, and he was asked about that, and he said something like, he's a great athlete, he'll be just fine. It's like, how else do you explain that? Nah, the guy sucks. You know, I always say that.
Yeah, exactly. What's he going to say? And to be fair, you know, I mean, they're a close-knit group, those guys, and so, you know, they are going to be supportive of Alejandro Villanueva, as they should be. And I think actually most of us are as well. We think Alejandro should get paid. The question is just how much. But the thing is, what else is he going to say? Oh, yeah, he's going to be fantastic. We don't need Big Al, you know, or any of that. He's going to be positive, but how does he know? They didn't see hardly anything from the kid last year. And really, you know, that's all you've seen thus far is football and shorts. So the Ethan Cooper thing, though, that is intriguing because I think he's a guard type.
Yes.
And he's a powerful, strong kid, but he's a little shorter.
6'2". Yep, 6'2", 322, almost like a bowling ball, I suppose. He's, you know, it's funny calling some of these guys sleepers because I say in an article of the same namesake that I wrote for the website, he's going to stand out on the field because he's a pretty big dude. But yeah, he's a Division II guy. He's from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, or IUP, in case you're wondering who on earth is Ethan Cooper. And if you don't remember Gerald Hawkins, he's from LSU. He was the 4th-round draft pick, not this year, but back in 2016. And he sat out the entire 2016 season on injured reserve. So those are two guys that are in the running as sleepers. And what we mean by sleeper is maybe somebody you don't expect to have a good camp, a good preseason, a name that's not being talked about too much. And it's kind of where I get to in the quarterbacks because it's really slim pickings here. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is not a sleeper. We can acknowledge that. There's only 4 names on this roster, so we just subtracted one. One of the other ones is Bart Houston. Sorry, if he even throws a pass in the preseason, I would be surprised. So it's really down to Landry Jones and Josh Dobbs, and I think people are always sleeping on Landry Jones, and I'm going to be tight-lipped, and I'm going to leave it at that.
What, you're overlooking Bart Houston? I'm telling you, I can't even do it. I can't pull it off. Yeah, Landry's going to be the number 2 quarterback. There's no question, I think, in anybody's mind. It would be a huge surprise if Josh Dobbs pushed him for that position this year. It may be less of a surprise next year, but right now, that seems incredibly unlikely. I will say that Dobbs was talking about what he was doing at mini camps and thus far, and he is keeping his eye on Ben, as he should be, because he said, you know, that's in his mind, he can learn the playbook quick because he's a very smart guy, but the kind of incidental things that he can pick up just from watching how Ben, carries himself, can help him at the next level. So that's kind of interesting. But I don't think it makes a bit of difference this year. Landry's the number 2 guy, and that's the way it's going to be, barring any unforeseen injury or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Don't sleep on Landry. He's had a solid – he's been progressing, and I figured that Dobbs will have a similar headaches and similar progression because, let's face it, most of the guys that are playing these preseason games, probably you got 90 guys right now. So this is why this is even a podcast subject for today's show, is that, or you got to whittle your way down to 53, and it appears that maybe 40-some, a good maybe 45 of these spots, if you're counting on certain guys making the roster again, like a William Gay or an Arthur Moats, most of this stuff is sewn up. I mean, there's not a whole lot of camp battles out there, and like we said, Bart Houston's not pushing anyone. I think Dobbs, it's not like Dobbs is just going to get cut and they're going to roll with 2 quarterbacks. That's never been Mike Tomlin's style, and nor really Bill Cowher's, to be honest.
Yeah.
You have some teams like the Colts back when they had Peyton Manning and the guy wouldn't miss any games. I think they had what was his name? Painter. I can't remember. Curtis Painter, is that his first name?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, that was like one of the backups there, or Sorgi or somebody like that. You never saw the guy throw a pass. And then when Manning hurt his neck, it was like, they had nothing there. They didn't even have a guy they were developing, let alone an okay backup, which is where we've said enough about Landry in the past. I don't need to rehash it. I'm just saying, don't sleep on it. Don't have these high expectations for Dobbs right out the gate. I'm going to say the same thing about the running back position, where there's not a whole lot of names. I'm sorry, Brandon Brown Dukes and some of these other guys, probably more suited to the practice squad. You're really narrowing it down to Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, and of course, the new addition, Niall Davis or Fitzgerald Toussaint. My sleeper of those names is Niall Davis. In fact, as we had mentioned several times before, he's a veteran. He's being probably brought in to work special teams, return kicks, things of that nature. But being the veteran and having some experience, I wouldn't be so surprised, so shocked, at least early in the season, maybe his name is higher up on the depth chart. Maybe they make James Conner earn it, because being that local Pittsburgh guy, maybe he thinks he's a shoo-in already. I mean, he's got the number 1 selling jersey also. So, you know what, maybe just make sure this guy, set him in place, you know what I mean? So he doesn't get, I'm not going to say he has too big of a head. I don't know the kid personally to say that he would have an ego like that, but I think you get what I'm saying, Brian.
Absolutely. And I think there's a very good chance that Niall Davis opens the season as the number 2 back in depth. I think he probably kicks Toussaint off the team or to the practice squad. I don't think they'll carry 4 running backs. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if Davis gets the nod over Conner early on, and then Conner has to earn that number 2 spot. There's not a lot. It's very rare that the Steelers gift someone a specific position. When Shazier came in and they essentially just ran him in with the ones right away and basically said, that's your position. That was the talk of camp. People couldn't believe it because that's not the way they normally do things. So it won't surprise me at all to see that. And by the end of the year, I would expect, if Conner has performed the way they anticipate, or maybe even sometimes towards the middle of the year, that he's taking over most of the number 2 role and Davis is stuck with kick return duty. But I think that's their primary goal for him anyway in the long run.
Oh, and I peed in someone's Cheerios because some people are like, man, I'm listening to the podcast. Why are you being such a downer on James Conner? I reinforce this once again. I am not. I want to see him succeed. When he's successful, the Steelers are successful. I'm just saying, look, nobody's been carrying the rock when Bell is healthy, and when you got one of the top running backs, if not the top running back in the NFL. Do you really want it any other way? It's the same way in Dallas. I mean, they have Alfred Morris as their backup there. How many times did Alfred Morris carry the ball rather than Ezekiel Elliott? I mean, come on, get real. I mean, they're using these guys as the bell cows, okay? So my idea with Niall Davis is that if Bell is sitting out from camp 2, we're going to see a lot of Niall Davis, and we're going to see him in preseason exhibition games and whatnot too, because if you remember last year, Mike Tomlin, these guys, Ben, Bell, Brown, Marquise Pouncey, James Harrison, I'm missing maybe a name or two out of this, these guys sat, but all but that maybe 1.5 quarters in the New Orleans Saints game, the third week of the preseason. They sat out the rest of the preseason. They did not play them whatsoever, and that's because of all the freak rash injuries like Pouncey getting hurt in that second week of the preseason against the Green Bay Packers several years ago. And that happened with, on the other side of that, was Jordy Nelson got hurt in that same game. So you're going to see teams being a little more cautious. It's like if you have a guy like Niall Davis who's going to get these reps, maybe he impresses. So sleeper, there's a sleeper. I don't think anyone's sleeping on James Conner and his potential. I'm certainly not, so I don't want it portrayed like that. I'm just saying he's new, and they tend to ease the rookies in over a gradual period of time.
Absolutely. You can't be anything but supportive of James Conner. And I think we all are. We want him to succeed, as you said. But, there's nothing wrong with saying you got to earn your spot.
No, nothing wrong at all. Now, having said that, how many wide receivers are on this roster?
753.
They only have 90 spots, and maybe 89 of them are wide receivers, and they have Ben maybe, so somebody could throw them the ball.
Yeah.
But I said it's kind of funny. Everyone keeps talking about Sammy Coates now, whatever, getting a knee scope and whatever else is going on with that. It's like, man, this guy can't catch a break. So maybe he's starting to ease his way out of this conversation. But a lot of people are excited that Martavis Bryant's back. A lot of people are excited about Juju Smith-Schuster. You hear stuff about Coates. AB's there, obviously. Eli Rogers. Then you forget about guys like Darius Hayward-Bay, Kobe Hamilton, DeMarcus Ayers, who was drafted last year. And, there's this other guy they added in free agency named Justin Hunter, who just happened to maybe turn his career around in Buffalo last year. And he's a 6'4", 4'3", 40. He's fast. He's tall, and he could be a sleeper.
He could be. That Justin Hunter, his name falls off of everyone's radar. And the unfortunate result of Sammy Coates being hurt may be the biggest benefit to Justin Hunter, and maybe even Juju Smith-Schuster. But, the thing is, when you're a number 2 pick like Smith-Schuster is, you've already got some notoriety. The team is invested in you. They gave a big pick. You're probably going to make the 53 because it's too tough to hide somebody like that on the practice squad. You're sort of set. You may not get a hat, but you're probably going to be on the squad. And they project you either this year or next year as being a contributor. Then you've got a free agent. The thing about Hunter is the Steelers don't usually sign free agents in the offseason and then cut them. It doesn't happen very often, and I can't even think of a time when it has. So you would think Hunter has an inside track on making the squad. But there was even speculation, and there remains speculation as to whether or not he does end up getting cut because this room is so competitive. It's hard to say because even though he had a decent year in Buffalo last year and was something of a target, he's never played with a high-caliber quarterback. He's nothing but potential. So camp is going to be critical to him. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
He has all of the measurables, and as you said, he's had Tyrod Taylor, Tannehill a little bit last year. I think he had one game he started in Miami, and then I think they waived him in Buffalo, got him off of waivers is how that worked. And then before that, obviously, Tennessee, and the Tennessee quarterbacks weren't all that strong. So going back, Hunter himself is a former second-round pick, just like Juju Smith-Schuster. Now that he gets Ben Roethlisberger and a great wide receiver coach and Richard Mann, who has just been putting a wide receiver factory is what they should be calling the Pittsburgh Steelers. The guy is like the wizard there. And we heard a little bit about that from DeMarcus Ayers in the interview a couple weeks ago, that Richard Mann's just a fantastic coach, as are most of the position coaches, not only with the Steelers, but in the league. These guys tend to stick around for a very long time. Head coaches, not so much, but your coordinators, your position coaches, if they're worth their salt, they have a job. So Hunter could be interesting. But moving forward is another interesting name. It's one that I almost feel very homerish, maybe too close to homerish, because he's another pick guy. He's grown up in Western Pennsylvania. I've had the opportunity to speak to him on several occasions. That's Scott Orndorff as the tight end, sleeper pick here. And more or less, that just has to deal with, I often wonder what the breakdown of this roster is going to be. The Steelers have kind of traditionally kept 3 tight ends on the roster over the last few years. You saw when Jesse James was the third-string guy, ahead of him was Heath Miller and Matt Spaeth. Orndorff kind of reminds me of like a Spaeth-type guy. I often wonder if Spaeth was a rookie heading into this talented tight end draft class that had, O.J. Howard and David Njoku and I'm forgetting one of these guys that went in the first round, Evan Ingram maybe, Adam Shaheen. Yeah. There were a lot of tight ends that were at the top of the charts, as opposed to when Max Williams was the first guy off the board by the Ravens a couple of years ago, and everybody said, oh, he's stolen from Pittsburgh. Maybe they did us a favor now, looking back on that. But you know what? I often wonder if Matt Spaeth would have been a guy that went in the third round, because I don't know that there's the same value to a blocking tight end as there is, hey, here's this guy that we could put out in the slot, and he's essentially a converted basketball player that's like maybe 6'6", 6'7" or so and can fly. He can run all these routes and very athletic. I don't think that necessarily, I think a lot of people are salivating over that potential. You get a lot of the combine hype with, hey, this guy ran this 40 and he could jump this high. And it's not that Orndorff had a bad combine or anything whatsoever. I think he was in a crowded field. And I think this is another one of these things that rubs off where the Steelers, just like James Conner, they kind of have an intimate knowledge, maybe a little more than other teams, of Orndorff kind of knew where he might fall or fall out of the draft and just plucked him right off the street. So I think there may be a spot there, because with Ladarius Green out of the picture now, you have Jesse James, and I mean, you got David Johnson, and then there's Xavier Grimble, who this is like his 4th or 5th NFL team. He's stuck with the Steelers, but he's going to have to show in camp too. There's still a battle. So as long as there isn't an extra receiver or maybe defensive back retained rather than a tight end, Scott Orndorff, this might be his position to lose.
Very well could be. Obviously Jesse is the number one right now. And I think the only thing that goes counter to Orndorff being able to make it is he's really very Jesse-like. He probably blocks a little better and catches a little worse than Jesse, but they're similar. They've been compared to each other a lot. And the question ends up being, do they want to go that route, or do they want to look at somebody else, like another guy we've talked to who might make it, like Faison Odom? Now, the difference is Faison really's got to work on blocking, because he has trouble getting that low because he's so big. And he needs to block a lot better if he's going to make the squad. So Orndorff probably has a lead on him, and it will be an interesting battle, because you're absolutely right. The X-Man needs to be consistent, and he's shown flashes but not consistency. I think David Johnson is a known veteran. He's probably going to make the squad. It would be kind of shocking if he didn't at this point. But that really probably leaves one more spot, as you said, maybe 2 that are open. And the question is, who's going to grab it? Is it going to be Xavier Grimble? Is it going to be Orndorff? Is it going to be somebody like Faison Odom? And I think that's an interesting battle to watch in camp. And Orndorff could be the guy.
Yeah, it's something to the effect of maybe 3 running backs. You got your fullback with Rosie Nix, and then you've got like an H-back that they've kept, which had been Will Johnson, and now is David Johnson, that kind of flirts as the tight end and could play fullback. And then you have maybe 3 tight ends total there. So that's kind of where I'm bleeding over like the position groups and thinking that, well, there's usually a player that can play a dual role of a fullback or a tight end, and that's where David Johnson fits in. And no relation to Will Johnson before him, but they have kind of retained a spot for a player like that. So unless they want to full go David Johnson as an extra tight end, or maybe they feel Chris Hubbard is more than adequate to play in those jumbo packages as he did towards the end of the season. I mean, he was was never tested as a tackle, and nobody knew he could play tackle, and all of a sudden he's a tackle and he's getting some playing time. So maybe they trim there. But, yeah, I gave Orndorff the edge because of Pitt playing in the ACC against those type of opponents. I think you said it best, maybe a better blocker than Jesse coming out of college, maybe still, who knows, because Jesse's that's probably his weakest part of Jesse James's game. Jesse's taller. I think if Orndorff's 6'4" to Jesse's 6'7", Orndorff, if he's 6'6", 6'7", probably gets drafted. Maybe 6th, 7th round, but I think he gets drafted. So I give him the edge over Odom just because Faison, our buddy, Faisal, he went to Fordham and hadn't seen maybe the same type of competition, maybe not the same type of pro offense, blah, 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 blah. So there may be a little bit more of an edge. I mean, once you're in the pros, you're in the pros. So if he's got the talent, I mean, where did Jerry Rice come from? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it doesn't matter where you come from. And I guess where I'm coming from now is to go over to the defensive side of the ball so we don't get too long-winded on a very small tight end position group. It was tough to pick a sleeper here because Cam Hayward's not a sleeper. Stephon Tuitt's not a sleeper. Javon Hargrave's not going to sneak up on anybody. So you basically have the free agent acquisition formerly of Jacksonville Jaguars, a former first-round pick. I don't know if it's necessarily a sleeper, but it's Tyson Alualu. Not my pick. I'm going with the veteran, the guy I just spoke with, Latarius L.T. Walton. And the reason I'm calling him a sleeper is I think people forget he stepped in back in December. He got his first start. He kept that position. They said adios to Ricardo Matthews. They did bring Alualu in, but Alualu, I think, I see playing more almost a nose tackle role. I think if anyone's in jeopardy of losing some playing time from Alualu coming in, it's going to be Big Dan McCullers and not L.T. Walton.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about Alualu. He can play any position on that line. And while I think the majority of his snaps may come at that nose tackle position, the Steelers aren't in that base defense nearly as much as they used to be, and he's going to get other snaps. But you're right, he's going to take more from Dan. McCullers has to get his nasty on if he's even making the team this year. He is. I think this is a make or break camp for him. But I kind of feel like Alualu has been a forgotten man. So if I was picking this sleeper, that's who I'd pick. Not because I think LT is not a capable choice, because he is. And he really did step up last year and performed not just at the line, but above the line to fill in for Cam Hayward. But I think people are forgetting that, Alualu was a first-round draft pick, like high first-round draft pick. And he's got a lot of power. He had some nagging injuries, plus he played with Jacksonville. I mean, come on. It's Jacksonville. How much can you shine there?
Well, to quote D'Angelo Williams, they have swimming pools at their stadium. At least they have that going for them.
It's the Cleveland of the South.
The deep South, right? 2010 first-round pick, number 10 overall. That is something that gets forgotten. I think people sleep on that. He got a halfway decent contract signing with the Steelers. I think it was – I'm trying to pull it up right now, I think. And, of course, it doesn't say. I think it was $6 million is what he got for 2 years maybe. As soon as I have it here on my wizardry of electronic devices that don't like to work. And, of course, the Steelers article reference doesn't have the dollar figures either. So I'm just going to take a guess. I think it was 2 years, $6 million. There's a sizable investment in a player like that. A guy that's a former first-round picks are always going to get second chances. Walton, 6th-round pick. But you know what? He's been in the system a little longer. We're going to see. It would be nice to see a little bit of rotation of each of those guys. I think Javon Hargrave still has the edge on both of them, but definitely Alu and LT definitely have sleeper written on them. Didn't mention Johnny Maxey. I think he's the odd guy looking out. Almost a roster prediction there, Brian. It really wasn't what we were looking for, but some other people are thinking, hey, with these guys, you got 5 solid defensive linemen there, a little bit of 4-3 maybe. You let Shazier roam the middle or something. I don't know. That's always the speculation. I don't want to think about that. They've only flashed that a couple times here or there. I think it's more or less by necessity of what they see with personnel on the other side of the field versus, hey, this is actually something that's in our game plan. So
Absolutely. To run to a true 4-3 for them right now, they don't have the linebackers for that.
No.
Not as it stands, but they will. They're gonna jump out of that base defense at probably more than they're in it. There's no doubt about that.
And you need those horses up front, like Alu, and also LT. I mean, when you're only putting maybe 2 defensive linemen on that front, those guys are getting double teamed. They're getting tired when you're talking about Tuitt and you're talking about Hayward and even Hargrave for that matter. So, I mean, you've got 5 solid guys who have experience starting in this league. You got 2 that are definitely studs in Cam and Stephon. So, I mean, it's really exciting to think about all those possibilities. I don't know if any of those guys are really going to sneak up as a true sleeper, but you mentioned linebackers. I split this in half. You have outside linebacker and inside linebacker. My outside pick is this year's 7th round pick, Keon Adams. It seems like another homerish type pick, but he's really the guy that nobody's thinking about. There's 2 outside linebackers taken in this draft. There's TJ Watt. His name is just overshadowed Keon Adams. I think Keon has the tools. Obviously, he's a little bit later of a pick due to all of the different, you're doing all the math and you're making all these educated guesses, but he has all of the tools necessary to potentially make this roster, if not right out the gate, maybe sometime later in the year or even into next season. But I think he's the sleeper here.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Keon is a guy that I think he's got the motor, he's got the strength, he's got the skill. He is, has been compared to James Harrison as a player. You get the sense that when you go back and you look at tape of him and you look at the way he takes the edge, you look at the power of his bull rush sometimes, you just get this sense that this is a guy who could make a play, right? Yes, he's playing against, Central Michigan competition. So or Western Michigan, right?
Yes, Western.
He's playing against a different level of competition than a lot of guys. But at the same time, when the idea is if you dominate at whatever level you're at, you're dominating. And he was really good. So it really is going to be interesting. It's a camp battle for him. It is for him to make the 53. In my mind, he'd have to kick somebody off the roster. And, that's going to be somebody like Moats or somebody like Chicolo. Obviously, he's not taking TJ Watt's spot. No. He's not taking Dupree's spot. He's not taking Harrison's spot. And they're not going to keep 6 outside linebackers on the roster, in my opinion. 5 is probably where they go. So, it's a good chance that he could get put on the practice squad. But at the same time, if he has the kind of camp that I think he's capable of having, he could sneak in. Now, what's interesting is that for all these guys, this is true. The thing about Keon is, it's going to depend about the kind of snaps and the quality of the snaps he gets. He's going to get work, and he has shown ability. But if he's going to get looks in the first half of preseason games, that's going to show us that he's got a better chance of making the 53. But if all of his snaps come late and he's playing mop-up duty, probably he's destined for the practice squad at that point.
And there's nothing wrong with that because that's how Chicolo, his path to ascending to the 53-man roster was very similar. He was a 6th-round pick and a relative no one. Now on the inside, everyone's kind of, hey, Vince Williams taking over for Lawrence Timmons. What's there behind him? And, everyone fresh in their mind might be Tyler Matakevich. I would say almost that he would be kind of a sleeper. But I really think people forgot about the guy who ended up on injured reserve and was the veteran pickup last year. And I thought he was kind of a liability in the preseason. I thought he was going to be cut. He actually was, but brought back because Bud Dupree was placed on injured reserve himself. That's Steven Johnson. And I think just by being a veteran, I think he's going to be the one. He's going to be the first one called up. It's not going to be Matakevich or LJ Fort if anything were to happen with Shazier or Vince Williams. So don't sleep on Steven Johnson. Is he an all-pro by any means. I'm not going to say that he's not, but is he maybe effective or capable enough to fill in at spot duty? I think he'll be okay, and I think you also have to have somebody who fills in for Vince Williams on special teams, assuming that Vince is not going to be playing in that same role this season.
Yeah, and if there is a position that the Steelers are light right now, it's inside linebacker. It won't surprise me if during camp and before we get to that fourth preseason game, they don't add a body somewhere, some kind of a veteran to see. But a lot of that will depend on Steven Johnson, right? If he's showing his value and his worth, then that helps them tremendously, because the reason people keep asking the question of after Vince Williams and Ryan Shazier, who do we got, is because it's a valid question. There is not the depth there that there is at almost every other position in the defense. So Steven Johnson making a play along with LJ Fort and Tyler Matakevich to make that a more stable situation is all the better. And I think you're probably right. Steven Johnson probably has the best track to do so, even though LJ Fort's been in the system probably longer than either of the others. And the question about Tyler Matakevich is always going to be whether he has the speed he needs to play as a starter or as a full-time player. It certainly isn't about his fire or his desire or his tenacity. It's just, is he capable of doing what you need them to do as a starter? But who knows? This is second year, and guys tend to improve in the second year, so it'll be interesting to see how these guys pan out.
Yeah, none of them are incredibly sexy names, and I kind of just get the gut feeling that they were willing to release LJ Fort for a week or so there, one of those catch-release type deals, that maybe he's lower on the totem pole than we think. Now, as far as going into the secondary, I did split the corners and the safeties into two, and I picked a veteran for each. Cody Sensabaugh is the cornerback pick here, and had the Steelers added him in the offseason in 2016, it probably would have been a very exciting signing. He comes in now very low-key after having played he had the big deal with the Rams, 3 years, $16 million. I don't know, it's a huge deal, but it's still a sizable amount of money, in my opinion. He came there with some pedigree, and then he was released. He went to the Giants. I think the Giants wanted to keep him. The Steelers snagged him. He's in a pretty good camp battle there himself. It could be with William Gay, Sanquez Golson. Depends if they're going to try and work out Cam Sutton in that slot corner position. Sensabaugh, also a guy that's capable of playing on the outside as well. But then with the safeties, Damian Stafford, who comes over from the Tennessee Titans, a very late addition in the offseason that was a free agent. He has some starting experience. I'm not going to say he's going to light the world on fire, but you never know. You may see a play or two out of him in this preseason, and I say don't sleep on his chances of making the final 53-man roster.
Yeah, the slot corner position is probably the most interesting camp battle that's there. I don't think William Gay comes out of camp as the starter. I think that William Gay will make the roster because I think he's a savvy vet. He's an extra coach and an extra set of eyes to these guys, but I don't think he's going to be the starter. And if that's not the case, who is it? Is it Sensabaugh? Is it Golson? As you said, is it going to be Sutton? Well, Sensabaugh has a very good and realistic shot. Now, it's a reasonable pick for a sleeper. The other guy that I like for this, especially in that slot position, is Golson. And the reason is because I feel like he's already been written off. When you take some of the commentary that, the general manager Colbert gave us, near the draft, he's like, well, we don't know what we got there. And I get it. The kids had nothing but bad luck. But it's going to be interesting to see if the value they placed on him as a second-round pick when they drafted him really is there. And if it is, I think it comes down to which one of those two ends up stealing this position. And I think we'll see all through the preseason, as well as maybe even through the first few games, a variety of guys getting snaps there before they finally settle on somebody.
Yeah.
and I don't know who that's going to be yet down the road. But I wouldn't sleep on Sensabaugh, but I also wouldn't sleep on Golson.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, and we're up against it. I mean, we could talk forever about football, Brian, but people don't have forever to listen. We don't have forever to record, unfortunately, so we do try to keep these straight and to the point, even when we do get off point sometimes. So I know, and that's just a small chuckle. We know how bad we could be. We're talking football 24/7. They may even put us on pay-per-view if people were able to listen to us constantly. So maybe reality TV for that matter, although we both think the reality TV is garbage, but
yeah. Well, let's just do the safety, which is Damian Stafford. I agree with you. Anything you have to say, I agree on this point. I think he's the sleeper.
Yeah, and that's just because they didn't add, just like Ethan Cooper, they didn't add anyone else. So you got Robert Golden and you got Jordan Dangerfield, both undrafted guys that are sitting there on the depth chart behind your two studs, Mike Mitchell and Sean Davis. So I keep wanting to call you Goose or Garth. I just realized they both begin with the G, but I always appreciate having my host who doesn't like the toast. I love toast, man. What's wrong with you?
Toast is evil. Burnt bread. There's nothing good about toast. What's going on with that?
This came all about, folks, because I saw a Steelers toaster on sale, and it burns like the logo into the bread, and he's like, I'm the host who doesn't like the toast. I'm like, oh, dear. It's something. It's totally you, Brian. I love you, buddy. I appreciate you being on with me again.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure, Joe.
Yep, and for everyone else, we love you too. We tweeted something like that just the other day. Always appreciate you spreading the word about Steel City Underground. Until next time, be safe, be good, and we'll have some surprises coming up and some training camp talk here in the future. I think I said be safe, be good. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.